All right, good evening. Welcome to the March 18th, 2024 meeting of the Marshfield Planning Board. The time is now 7 o'clock. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by MCTV, and we're holding a live remote meeting via Zoom. Our members here tonight are Katie O'Donnell, Nick Papastratis, Fred Monaco, Kevin Cantwell. I'm Mike Viviano, the chair, and our associate member, Scott DeCastro, is here as well. With us tonight is Greg Guimond, our town planner, and Karen Horn, our assistant town planner. At this time, I'll make a motion to open tonight's public meeting and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred
Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. All right, so first on the agenda is a release of surety for, what's the name of the road there, Greg?
Progress Way, Commerce Way.
Okay, wait, that's a public meeting. We got to open that?
Nope, it's a vote to reduce the surety for the road.
Okay, so we have a request to reduce the surety. Greg has come up with a number of $72,240. Any questions about that?
Checked by Pat Brennan as well.
Okay. All right, seeing no questions, I'll make a motion that we release the surety for $72,240. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred
Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. All right, next we're moving on to the zoning articles for the 2024 town meeting coming up in April. Is this a public hearing? This is a public hearing, right, Greg?
This is a public hearing, yep.
Yep, so I'll make a motion that we open the hearing to review the town meeting articles and waive the reading of a notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred
Monaco, aye.
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, this public hearing is open. I'll let Greg take it away.
All right, thank you, Michael. So for tonight's meeting, we'll be discussing the MBTA community zoning change and map change. Those are scheduled to be on the special town meeting warrant versus the annual town meeting warrant. So they could be heard the first night, hopefully, and we would have the most residents possible for that discussion and those articles. The other articles are updating the table of use for a couple of categories to reflect the 2019 annual town meeting changes for 1104 open space residential developments and 1108 age-restricted adult villages. The next change is to 1305 Brent Rock Village Overlay, subsection F1 on flood proofing, and that was from the building commissioner. Andrew said that he would be attending, so I'll let him speak if he is here for that article. The next one is a map change updating the Inland Wetlands District Overlay with a newer Natural Resource Conservation Services, which used to be the Soil Conservation Services, soil data for very poorly drained soils. And then there are 5 clerical articles addressing changes from the Housing Partnership to Housing Trust, and also some changes in the Housing Authority because they're no longer being used as the Housing Partnerships Bank. And DHCD has been changed to EOHLC, and we'll get into what that means in a few minutes. These changes are located in the following sections: 201 definitions, 1108 age-restricted adult and village, 1114 inclusionary zoning for affordable housing, 1116 mixed-use buildings in the B1, and 1306 planned mixed-use development. Dang. All right, I'm gonna have, it's not letting me change my slide, so I'm gonna have to pop in and out of sharing the screen. So on the MBTA zoning, 40A, section 3A is what was changed. There are 3 subsections to that. And all right, I'm gonna have to stop scare. And under Section A, the important ones is that all MBTA communities have the zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides for at least one district of reasonable size, which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. Said district shall have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre. The district shall be located not more than a half mile from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station. And the housing can't have age restrictions, and it must be suitable for families. The MBTA guidelines were modified to allow the communities to get 10% of the units to be affordable. Under Section B, there were originally 3 discretionary grants tied to the MBTA zoning changes. And last August, the state revised it and added 13 discretionary grants. Of those 13 discretionary grants, only the last one, M, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, or MVP, the town has gotten 2 MVP grants in the past. We have not used the other discretionary grants. This is unfortunate. It's going to take a little longer. Sorry. The third section of the third section of the guidelines is actually the part that many people ask, well, why is Marshfield in this? We're not anywhere near a half mile to a commuter rail station. The state guidelines allows for rapid transit or breaks communities into rapid transit bus service, commuter rails, or adjacent communities. And Marshfield has been designated as an adjacent community. Okay, got that slide ready. And it's not because we are served by GATRA, it's because we are adjacent to Scituate, which has a commuter rail station in both Greenbush and in North Scituate. So I'm going to talk through a couple of slides so I don't have to keep turning on and off the screen. So under the guidelines, Marshfield has 11,575 housing units as of 2020. So the state has basically designated that we need 1,158 units zoned for multifamily. And under their original guidelines, they wanted a minimum land area of 50%. They give us this flow chart for their compliance model program, which the planning staff in Marshfield did follow. We ran a bunch of scenarios. They provide us with what they call excluded lands. Hold on, I'll pop up that slide. So the excluded lands are shown in the white box: hydrologic features, protected, restricted open space, wellhead protection areas, which are zone 1s, Title V setbacks, surface water protection area, zone A, right-of-ways, most public lands. Under sensitive lands, they also include zone 2 wellheads, special flood area, hazard areas, active farmlands, I can't say that today, sorry. Priority habitat of rail species and surface water zone B and C are also. Come on. The state does not like partially zoned parcels in their MBTA zone. Marshfield, especially in our B2, we do have some partially zoned lots. So on our designated, what we did is when we drew in the new MBTA district, we made sure that they were complete lots. One thing that's important to note is that the state does allow communities to include land that's already developed. So you can see on the right is the first excluded and sensitive map for the town of Marshfield when we ran it the first time. The state would like, as we stated before, MBTA community zones to be within a half mile of a station, along transit routes, walking distance to stores and services, in villages or downtowns if possible, along commercially zoned areas. On the map, we also showed this orangey red line is the route of the Gatra bus, which runs through from the Stop and Shop in Pembroke, runs along Plain Street, goes up Furnace, goes up a little ways on 3A, comes back down, goes through the downtown, drives through Marshfield Neck, down around Ocean Bluff, comes by the Brant Rock Market, goes through the Green Harbor area, goes up to the Senior Center, and then goes out into Duxbury, goes through Duxbury to Kingston, and eventually gets to the commuter rail station in Kingston. As you can see on the right, the map, all the colored areas are excluded as sensitive areas. And what was left did not meet the state requirements for what they were looking at. So the planning staff went back and we tried again. The areas in blue are what the state was looking for, and we added a couple others. We wanted to locate along the Gatra route because it is our only transit available. We tried to avoid sensitive areas. We tried not to overload one area of town, and we tried to improve where possible existing grandfathered uses that may not be the best thing in a water resource protection district. It's actually working now. So after some additional review and discussion, the planning staff narrowed it down to the north side of Route 139, roughly from School Street to the west, or on the left side here, all the way over to the high school and the Furnace Brook Middle School. This area meets most of the requirements of the MBTA communities law. It's along the Gatra route. It's close to Route 3. Also the high school and middle school, the town ball fields, the Boys and Girls Club, a supermarket, restaurants, other businesses, and the town dog park. This is the overlay or the district on top of the air photo. So you can see the high school here is that big white building. You can see the majority of the area is already developed, and there are some existing multifamily properties that were built in the roughly 1969 to 1971. About 800 units exist in the area. It is located in a sensitive area because it is in the zone 2 for the Furnace Brook and Union Street wells. A development would need to install an upgraded wastewater system or a package treatment plant. This area is roughly 84 acres in size. It slightly exceeds in both the land area requirement of the state and also in the number of units that we're to require. One second. So the state gave us a model bylaw, which is what I used, and we modified the language to better fit Marshfield. Some of the changes that we included or did from the state model are as follows. We're using an overlay district over the existing B2 district versus creating a whole new district. We're capping the height of floors at 4. The state model allowed up to 6. We're capping the density at 16 units per acre. The state model only has a minimum threshold of 15 units per acre. Minimum lot area, we put at 30,000. I believe the existing B2 is 20,000. The state model suggested no minimum lot area at all. Keeping with the Water Resource Protection District, the nitrogen loading and lot coverage, we kept those in place. So it's the 5 parts per million and 60% of the lot to be impervious. We're also looking for the applicants to contribute towards creating a safe bus stops along 139 or financial assistance to creating a second GATRA route to the Greenbush commuter rail station. And then requiring 10% of the units to be meet the state's eligibility requirement for the subsidized housing inventory. And as I noted, the MBTA community zoning language and map changes are in the special meeting warrant and are expected to be discussed at April 22nd. So that's the MBTA zoning changes. I'll go quickly through some of the other articles. Karen, did you notice is Andrew online?
No, I don't see him.
Okay, so I'll just try to go through everything then. So the first article, two articles are changes to the open space residential and age restricted. We had made changes in 2019 to the text, but we forgot to add the changes to the table of use. So what we ended up doing was removing the special permits in the R2, R3, and RB for the open space residential. And we removed the special permits for the R3 and the RB in the adult restricted age restricted adult village. And partially that was because we had several different open space residential subdivisions developed. And we found that those smaller lot sizes, even for the R1, was tough. Anything under 15,000 square feet, especially due to the size home that the builders wanted to build and most people or most buyers were looking for in residential subdivisions in Marshfield. The next one was the one that the building department had given us, and I have identified the language in red with the strikeout is what was being removed, and the language below in blue is what would replace it. And it's basically to make our zoning language in compliance with the Massachusetts State Building Code and the Marshfield Conservation regulations. The next change is during COVID in 2021, the Natural Resource Conservation Services, which was formerly the Soil Conservation Services of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, updated their soils maps. This new information is much more accurate than the old layer. And the updating to this map will result in the following changes for the town. 400 acres will come out of the inland wetland district. 414 structures will come out of the district. 133 structures will come into the district, but all of those structures are pre-existing and would be grandfathered. The 5 clerical articles addressing the changes are from the Housing Partnership to the Housing Trust, also removing some of the language on the banking part of the Housing Authority, changing DHCD to EOHLC. And those sections were in definitions, which I show below. And you can see the EOHLC is Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And the Housing Trust was added at the last town meeting, and that was Marshfield's Affordable Housing Trust or its successor. And then this is out of the 1108 age restricted adult village is an example of the changes for those areas where you can see the Department of Housing and Community Development is now reading as Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. You can see below the Housing Authorities being changed to the Affordable Housing Trust, et cetera. So those were the changes for those others. Oops. Sorry, I gotta go back. Okay. Am I still sharing this screen, Karen?
No,
Yeah.
I am sharing the screen or no?
No.
no.
Okay. All right. So The following steps, basically, the next step is for the planning board for questions and comments. Then the chair will ask if there's any questions or comments from the audience. I think everybody here knows how to use the hand functions, etc. And then after the hearing and all questions and comments, I expect the planning board would close the public hearing. And then prior to town meeting, the board will discuss at a posted public meeting, which will be probably April 1st, because that's your next meeting and that's before town meeting, and vote on its recommendations to town meeting. Okay, I'm all set, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Greg. So one of the questions I was thinking of, when they let us do the 10% affordable, is this like the 40Bs when it's all rentals? Do we get the rentals all as affordable units counted on the roll?
I don't think we get to count all the units as rentals. They have not answered that question. I don't think that question has come up yet. I think they're viewing these as market rate ownership, condominiums.
Okay.
So I expect only the 10% will count.
Maybe that could be in the comments that if there are rentals, they would all count toward your 10%.
That's specific to the 40B law, so I don't know if that's something that would work here, since it's under a different statute.
Yeah, well, they just made this whole thing up, so they can add some things into it if we ask, possibly.
Fair enough.
They can make up whatever they want. We can ask them to make more things up. So is there any other questions from the board members?
Yeah, Greg, I think we discussed this before. So there's 2 grants right now that we get from them, right?
Well,
From the
there's
state
one that we've used twice, the MVP.
Right.
They do also have a planning grant, which we've never used before. And there was a land acquisition grant that we've never used before.
Okay.
But the majority of the discretionary grants are funding mechanisms for sewers and that type of stuff to support higher density housing.
All right. I guess, you know, part of it, and we saw what happened. I mean, they're not, when this first came out, it was a may. Now it's a must. You must approve this, is what the state's saying, basically, right? I mean, we saw what happened in Milton and other towns. So they're,
well, it's always been a must on the state side, but at first it was basically 3 discretionary grants was kind of what they were using as a hook. They've expanded to that, and I think in the case of Milton, they've gone into a different grant to use to try to have Milton.
So like Mike said they make stuff up and they add stuff in there. So I don't know. I'm just asking questions for my own.
They have
you know.
already changed their guidelines 3 times.
Yep.
Greg, what were the 2 MVP grants that we got?
We got the initial MVP grant to become an MVP community and to have a plan. And then we had a follow-up MVP grant that studied the coastal flood zone from Wrexham down through Brant Rock and stuff for long-term coastal resiliency, which was done, I think 2 years ago, was completed.
So after we go through this hearing and we have a vote before town meeting, if the board votes against it, and the town at town meeting votes it down as well, would that just mean we're not part of it and not eligible for those grants? Or would the state have other repercussions?
We would not be eligible for those listed grants right away. And then it sounds like the state is basically saying they would take legal action, or a third party may take legal action against the town for not complying.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike's. I was thinking the same thing as Mike just said. So all right.
think it's a pretty tough sell at town meeting.
Yeah,
to-
I,
To
Yeah.
pass this. So it should be interesting. I know the other towns, so I didn't have a follow-up on what happened. There's two other towns that voted it down. Do you know what happened to them?
The only one I know officially is Milton at the moment. Karen, is there another one?
I think Rentham was considering it, but I don't know if they've taken it. I don't think they've taken an official vote.
well, I know on the North Shore, there was an article in the Globe a couple weeks ago, like Rockport and a bunch of towns on the North Shore were looking at, you know, at the issue itself. And, you know, I think they said up there, they think it was going to be a tough sell up there for them as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Milton's the only one who's actually gone against it. Everyone else, I think, is still in the planning or haven't gone to town meeting yet.
Right. Because most town meetings are in April, right? In the state. So March and April. So, all right.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Anyone else from the board? I see Katie, you're off mute there.
No, I mean, I think you guys have asked questions that I had written down too. Greg, like what mechanism, like if the state says that they'll pursue legal action against the town, do you know like what that would look like?
I think it would be a lawsuit against the town for compliance with the state law.
They did file suit in Superior Court for Milton, and they also named the building commissioner in that suit because it said failure to comply. And I don't have the exact wording memorized, but that would prevent the enforcement of the rest of Chapter 48. So we couldn't
So
do
they,
zoning.
yeah, they have said that if the towns do not cooperate, then they will no longer, the AG's office will not be approving any further zoning changes.
Well, that, but also that we can't be doing permits and issuing permits for what we do now under zoning, is the way I read it.
Like building permits, or are we talking about subdivision?
I don't know, but that's why it named the building commissioner. I don't, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but.
I mean, it just seems like a huge step from the state that, you know, originally it was like, oh, you won't be eligible for these grants, but now like this seems like the state trying to take local zoning out of the hands of municipalities. And well, on a theoretical level, I think that if we had more regional planning, it would probably be a good idea. I don't trust the state and I'd want to retain local control as much as possible. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what's going on with other communities in the next few weeks as well. But the fact that the state keeps changing the guidelines is also very concerning. Can I switch gears? Greg, the inland wetland zoning.
Yep.
I was just curious, how did so much land come out? I feel like we don't have less wetlands, we have more.
Well, part of it is because the map is a lot more aligns with the DEP wetlands, the actual DEP wetlands. So the older soils maps, in certain areas, there were large areas that were supposedly in it, that upon field investigations, conservation was not coming back in with wetlands and stuff. So as I said, this map is much more conforming to the actual wetlands as they exist.
And the original one was done in 67, and that was just through a book. I don't even know how they digitized it, but now it is actually a digitized GIS layer.
Yes.
So I would suspect it's more accurate.
Okay, and then they actually did collected data for it.
Well, they had collected data back in the old days as well with augers, hand augers, and they were going out and doing 3-foot auger holes and stuff and taken the soils and stuff back then, they would have locations and they would have longitude and latitude, but they didn't have the actual tied into the mapping programs like we do now with the GIS.
Okay.
So I think we should go back to the communities there.
Yep.
Now, I think, Greg, is it possible for you to talk with Galvin and find out what this possible non-issuance of permits is really going to entail, if that is a threat?
I will ask him about that, yes.
Because I think we don't know enough about it, and if the state says, oh, you didn't comply and you're not going to get any permits until you do, then that's a pretty big threat.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if they would keep that for a 40B project as well, because Modera is about to file for building permits.
Yeah, of course they would let that go through.
Second one.
It's theirs.
I mean, I guess
Right.
there's the scenario that we could vote to endorse it, but the town could still vote it down at meeting, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And remember that it's a simple majority. The state changed the zoning. It used to be 2/3 for all zoning articles. But about a year ago, the state changed it and basically said, if it is a pro-housing article, you need a simple majority, not a super majority.
We don't get many questions at town meeting about zoning articles, but I think there's going to be quite a few about this one.
Yeah.
So everything we can figure out before town meeting is going to be important. So, having
The-
Galvin's opinion on what the repercussions could be or have been threatened is a big one.
To the extent the lawsuit that they filed said that if the town does not comply with said injunction, enter a further injunction prohibiting the town and the building commissioner from enforcing any aspect of the town zoning bylaw rules or regulations to the extent that such enforcement is inconsistent with the town's obligation under section 3A and the guidelines. So I don't know exactly what that would entail. But that is the wording that it says there. Perhaps that doesn't include building permits. I don't know what that includes, but obviously they think it includes something.
Yeah, Galvin will have to tell us what that means.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty wild to me. To be
Yeah.
honest.
I don't know what it means, so I don't even know if it's wild, Katie.
I mean, my imagination is running wild.
Okay,
about
yeah,
all
that's
this.
fine. I
So,
understand.
yeah, I mean, just is the state even? It just seems like a very heavy-handed approach that doesn't take into account, the diversity of different communities. Like, this is just a broad stroke that they're applying to every community in the state. Our name is Marshfield. We have a lot of, considerations that don't apply to other towns.
Right.
I don't know.
It also says in the suit that in the event that the town proves unable or unwilling to comply with the injunctive relief sought above, this may include, but is not limited to, appointment of a special master to propose a zoning bylaw that complies with section 3A and the guidelines, or imposition of fees on the town, or fines on the town.
A special master?
That's what it says. That's the relief they're seeking. If these things if Milton doesn't get their act together.
At least that's what they're asking the judge.
Yeah.
Craig, is there, do we have for a town meeting any kind of build out map to show that if, 3 of these parcels decided to do it, how many we'd be talking about? I guess it's just an acreage times 15, right?
Well,
If you knock down every building.
actually, our language is at 16 units per acre at a maximum. And we did that because remember, they have very strict requirements and procedures they want you to follow. And if you take setbacks into account, how high the buildings are, what our land, our impervious surface coverage is and stuff. So we found in order to get the 15 unit minimum, we had to bump it up to 16 units per acre under the scenario that we have with the 4 floors, keeping the maximum impervious surface at 60%, having parking requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we followed, Karen was very careful with all the mapping and stuff to make sure that we hit the number, and we're a little over the number that they were looking for.
But as close as possible as we could get to the minimum number.
Yes,
Sure. So if they knock down every building in the 85 acres, it's 1,300 units.
yeah, roughly.
And there's a couple condo developments already there, so.
Yeah, Greg, what did you say? There's 800 units now?
There's about 800 units in that area existing.
Oh, that's
They're
surprising.
all the
Wow.
older, all the older apartments and condos from 69 to 71.
So
Right.
it's about double the amount of zoning that would allow. Okay, anything else from the board? I think some people might be here from the public.
No.
Okay, anyone here for the public? Hi, Eric, go ahead, just name and address for us, please.
Eric, you muted
Yeah, he's looking for it.
on the bottom left side. There you go.
Still can't hear you, Eric. You are unmuted. Does your computer have a microphone? All right, well, Eric's looking for that. Is there anyone else from the public we could go to right now? Eric, you can also call in through Zoom on your cell phone.
Oh, what's that cell phone number?
Well, we'll give him a minute to figure out, or he can go through your cell phone to get on it as well. Because we know there's definitely a microphone built into that one.
Bro, can he type his question into chat?
Yes, he could type his question in the chat. Eric, on the bottom of the bar, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over from the left is chat. If you click on that, a little box will appear on the right-hand side and you can type in your question. Mike, while we're waiting on that, I think that kind of gives us a good reason why we should leave the written record open until April 1st.
Sure, that's fine. Was that Eric's request? I know it was somebody from the public there.
No, that was Joe Pesovich.
Okay. So we had a couple other articles. Anything else we want to talk about right now? Any other comments? Oh, okay, there we go. Eric said, how many parcels in the 86 acres? And Greg had a map up earlier.
Hold on a second. I don't think we had the number of parcels identified, but let's see if I can count it quickly.
I can get it, but I don't have it here.
What was it, about 30 or 40 different parcels in that neck of the woods? You can count them right on the map. They're pretty big.
I got at least 28.
At least 28, so around 30.
So actually, I have a question on the parcels. So that's existing parcels, but the zoning, the changes that come with that, what was it, 30,000 square feet?
Yep.
Per lot? So that could be subdivided further, right?
Or merged together.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see, I think there might be another question there. So around 30 parcels, Eric. If you have other questions, you can type them in. We'll try to get them answered for you. Again, if you have do you have a smartphone, Eric? So you could cancel off of here, go on the town website, click the agenda, and just do it through your phone. So while we're waiting for that, Greg, you have any other comments on any of the ones we went through already?
Nope. And Scott Dixon, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I'm good on this. You know, I understand it's a complicated issue. But I think the town would be doing the right thing to support it. And I think the land that Greg has outlined is honestly the best possible scenario the town could come up with. Just my 2 cents.
Well, I don't like the way the state has dealt with it. If there are about 800 units in the existing area where we're looking at the overlay now, it's my understanding most of those are not affordable, right? Even though we have several apartment and like condo complexes there, they don't have deed restrictions. Correct.
They don't count towards our 40B numbers. Correct. And they never have, even though some of them were less expensive than market rate units and stuff at some point in their careers. The
Hey,
price of,
Eric, do you wanna call into the planning board office and Greg can relay your questions?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Oh, I just heard you.
yeah.
So you have to mute one of them though, because we're gonna get back noise, so
Yeah, I'm already getting back feed from you guys.
just mute one of your
mute your
the one with
computer,
the
leave
picture.
your phone on.
What do you want me to do?
Mute your
The one-
computer.
Yep, so the one with the picture, mute that one.
He just needs to turn the sound off, not muting.
Oh, okay.
Try and turn it down.
No, that's good.
I'm not
Yep.
professional with this stuff, so
That's right, we get you now.
the whole thing is that I look at, and I'm glad that I see some of you board members with concerns in regards to how this is playing out with in regards to the state's heavy-handedness. I look at them as a tyrannical government right now, and I'm hoping that the board as a whole votes this all down, because we can't allow the government to be so heavy-handed on the communities all over the state. And I think a message from the planning board to say no to this, and as well, hopefully, as town meeting with the majority of residents say no to this, it sends a message to the state, especially to our state senator and 2 state reps, who I believe all voted yes to pass this law. Mr. Guimond, I know you and I have had discussions on this in the past, but I haven't seen you post it up in this meeting unless I missed it, but could you post the state law on this subject?
I did show it on the slides.
Is there a certain section you're looking for, Eric?
Excuse me?
Is there a certain section you're looking for?
The main, yeah, this, all right, that's A. I think there's a B and a C, right?
Yep. B is the discretionary grants. C is where they say there will be state guidelines.
Can you go back to B?
B, okay, yep, there
I
you
think it
go.
was B.
That's B. Do you want A?
Maybe A, it's in there. I'm trying to.
So that's my short version of A. Here's the full language of A.
All right, I could have sworn when I read the law, it was, in B, it says that if a community chose not to accept it, which sounds like the state is allowing the communities to make a choice whether to accept this or not, but they'll lose certain funding in regards to grants, I guess you could look at. And when I looked up all the laws in regards to the grants, everything applied to if you were going to go through and build this massive development. So I don't think there'd be any impact on us in regards to not accepting it. But you did say, Greg, that the state has added on other grants that they would strip communities of, if I'm understanding. Another heavy-handedness by the state. Or unelected, I should say unelected officials.
So it went from 3 discretionary grants to 13, or 13. So there's now 16 discretionary grants that they are saying that they will not provide towns and cities if they do not comply with it.
Yeah, so this isn't from the lawmakers up on Beacon Hill. This is from unelected bureaucrats at a lower level, correct?
This is the guidelines originally drafted by DHCD, but is now being used by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So yes, your state legislators did not draft the guidelines.
Yeah, so we have unelected bureaucrats dictating what we should be doing in our communities. And the law, in my opinion, when I read it, is pretty clear in regards to how this is supposed to be enacted. And like I said, I believe it was letter B that said if a community chooses not to accept it. All right, so right there in itself in the law, it leaves an opening for the communities not to accept this. And then there was, at the time, in the law itself, there were a couple of things that there would be funding mechanisms that the communities wouldn't be eligible for. So my look at it is that the law is already written, it appears. You just have unelected bureaucrats adding onto it, being a tyrannical government. My look at it is that let's go to court over this, maybe even join hands with other communities and battle back against the state on this tyrannical movement of theirs, because if you don't say no to this right now, there's going to be more coming down the pike.
So Eric, on that first paragraph, it says an MBTA community shall have zoning. So in the state's mind, they're saying you have to do this. On the discretionary grants, they were basically saying if you don't do this, this is what you're going to lose out. And then that C category is where they say, and we can't think of every possible thing, so we're going to allow the state's DHCD / Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to come up with further guidelines to help regulate this. Or I shouldn't say regulate, because it is not a regulation and it is not a law, it is a guideline.
All right, so I have my child in the back of me crank the TV up, so I missed some of that. But I'm just gonna, in case I missed what you said, Greg, am I correct that I believe in letter B, because I don't think what you have posted shows everything, that it does state that if a community chooses not to accept this, that there are X amount funding grants, I guess you could say, that they will lose out on.
So I got something else from the state here, and it says B, an MBTA community that fails to apply with this section shall not be eligible for funds from, and then it starts the list. So that's the official language on B.
Right. So if you choose not to accept it, this is what you lose. So
Yes.
right there in itself, they give you the option. This is what you lose. And like I said, if you read all those, the housing grant, the local capital fund, and the Mass Works infrastructure program, the way I read it, it looks like it's all tied into funding massive projects like this. especially if I'm understanding that Pembroke is placing theirs right on the Marshfield border. You could be looking at a massive sewer project in the town of Marshfield, as well as a possible expansion of our town sewer, which will burden the expenses on the ratepayers and taxpayers of Marshfield, as well as the school system. So I ask that the board, and is hopefully anybody attending town meeting in April, say no to this and tell the state to take the tyrannical attitude and go pound sand.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, let's see. If we stop sharing the screen, I just want to see if there's
Yep,
anyone
I'm
else in the
sorry.
public. All right.
Took me a minute to get to it.
All right, looks like all the same people here. So anything else for any of the board members? So Greg, is our plan to close this and leave the written record open?
My recommendation would be yes, to close the public hearing, leave the written record open for additional comments to the planning board to noon on April 1st. And then for the board to take this up for discussion on its recommendation to town meeting at the April 1st meeting. It would be after we have two other continued public hearings. It would be the third public hearing, or not public hearing, sorry. Third item that would be taken up on April 1st.
Okay, sounds good. Seeing nothing else from the public or the board, I'm going to make a motion that we close this public hearing. We're going to leave the written record open until April 1st at 12 o'clock. If any of the public or anyone else would like to submit written notes. And is there a second for that?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell.
Fred,
Brett Monaco, aye.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, so we'll talk about the recommendation on April 1st.
Okay.
All right, Greg, I think just board and staff report after that.
So I was up at John Sherman walking the open space property line with the Conservation Commission and one of our board members. We have some cleanup already in process. We have a couple of more things that have to be corrected. We will get into that again on April 1st. And we've had some heavy rain again, and we've had some drainage issues. And there is some erosion at the John Sherman site on one of the lots and stuff. And but most of the other subdivisions have done well over the last couple of storms. The beach nourishment is finished. Tomorrow night we'll have a public hearing wrap up on that beach nourishment for the Green Harbor area. There is still trucks going through Marshfield, but they are going to Duxbury Reservation. They're still putting material out on that beach. And it sounds like they will not be finished until April 1st. The Marshfield town of Duxbury beach work was done 1 month earlier than everybody anticipated. So that went pretty well. And that's it. Karen, do you have anything?
No,
Okay, anything from the board at all? All right, well, seeing none, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Greg and Karen. I'll make a motion that we close tonight's hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Katie O'Donnell, aye.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, have a good night.